Okay, if you need a lesson in patience, start doing watercolor. I'm telling you. Hi everyone. Hi, I'm Ronnie Walter. Welcome to this video. Today, a little Christmas cheer. These were so fun. There's two versions of this today. Make it your own, customize it. I hope that that is always true for you, that your designs are going to come out different than my designs, and I think that's what's awesome about this process of making art, is we make it our own. And I am so proud of you for being here. Sometimes creativity takes courage, and here we are. So today's tutorial, we have these two adorable little Christmas pets. So you can make a dog, you can make a cat, you can make the dog look like yours, you can make the cat look like yours, or your loved ones. Precious pets. So I've penciled my designs onto the paper. And as you know, I always have a free tracing that you can download and use if you don't want to draw your own. You can just use mine. I provide those for almost all of my videos. And so that's in the description box. Okay. It's a little different than most of the microns that I use. This is the sketch brush. And it has more of a brush tip, although it's still like a felt tip. But it gives you kind of a thick, thin line, which we're going to play around with this one. Not necessary for the design. You can use any kind of waterproof marker that you have. But this one I've really been enjoying lately. So we're going to use this Pigma sketch brush. It is by, well, Pigma. I guess these are the microns. I don't mean to confuse you. Yeah, it's a Pigma Micron, is this little thin one that we use a lot. And then this is the Pigma sketch brush. I guess it's not technically a micron, but this is what we're using. Enough about the marker. And I think I'm going to start with a marker. It doesn't matter in this case whether you would start with the marker or start with the watercolor, but I'm going to start drawing. So let me set the doggy aside for the moment, and we're going to do this, but I forgot my glasses. I'll be right back. This paper is 4 inches wide by 5 1/8 inches tall. Okay, so I'm going to set the little dog aside, and let's start working on the cat. Yes, I am. I do have the right marker. Okay, so we're going to start with line work today, but you can always start with watercolor if you like. The only thing is I would have a less heavy pencil on here if you're going to start with watercolor. And, you know, with our kneaded eraser, you can always pick up that excess pencil if you're going to do that. I can leave it on here for now because we can erase afterwards. Okay, setting that aside too. So I've penciled my designs onto the paper. So, and as you know, I always have a free tracing that you can download and use. It's not like you don't want to draw your own. You can just use mine. I provide those for is that you can almost all of my videos. Fine line, and so that's in the description box. It's only going to go as thick as it can, but you can have a thick and thin line that's pretty cool. Okay, so back to the drawing. And I'm not trying to go for a cartoony type line. I still want it to be loose and feel cute when I draw. So we're going to come in and kind of do a thick and thin situation. That got a little funky on the bottom, but that's all right. And there you go. I am going to put some extra feathers on here. And then I thought I would add some little feathers on the bottom. And this is why I love line work with my artwork, or with my paintings, is that I get to add these fun little touches as I go. Okay, so now we're going to move down to the holly. And I am really enjoying doing Christmas designs. I designed so much Christmas in my licensing career that sometimes I kind of lost my Christmas mojo, because I was working on Christmas in April and July and September and January, and it just felt like it was a never-ending holiday. So now that I do less of that and more teaching, which is so awesome, I have rejoined the Christmas lovers. Although I do like a simple decor as far as Christmas goes. But anyway, it's fun to draw all these images. So we're going to get that little bow in there. And it's just a different way of making a mark than with the micron. I kind of do a more solid line than I do with the micron pen. Okay, this is getting cute. It's going really quickly. I kind of like to do that broken line every once in a while too. And then you can particularly do that if you, you'll see it in the border. Tend to have a more wobbly hand. This is a technique that will work easier for you. So we got her cute nose. I'm going to give her kind of bigger eyes than my typical dot eyes, and then whiskers. Okay, so now we're going to do this outside border, and I want it to be wobbly. It's intentionally wobbly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come around these corners, and I kind of give them a break, and it helps when we have things breaking the border. For one thing, it looks cute, and also it makes it easier to make a border. And if you stop, just start again. And sometimes I like to just put that little dot in there. A dot or a couple of dots. When you find yourself starting to wobble more than you want, just lift up your pen and then start again. It's not a contest in who can make the straightest line. It's not a contest at all, actually. Okay, so now we have our little kitty done. And now we're going to do the dog. And we're basically going to do the same thing. So as I draw the dog, which is basically what I just did, I'm going to speed up the film. And I will be back when it's time to paint. Okay, so we put the whiskers on the cat, and I'm going to put some freckles on the dog. So I like odd numbers, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There. Okay, he is ready to paint. Well, first we're going to erase. So let's, I'm going to use the kneaded eraser. And the reason we use a kneaded eraser with watercolor often, we can either use a plastic eraser, which is great. Make sure you use a light hand. A kneaded eraser is a little more gentle on the texture of the paper, and it also doesn't leave crumbs. Now, just FYI, do not use like the pink eraser on the top of a yellow pencil, or one of those pink pearl erasers, because they are basically like using sandpaper on your watercolor paper. So if you can get a kneaded eraser, you will be very happy. They're like $1. So, and they will last you a very long time. So I'm just gently going in and getting as much of that pencil as I can off of there. Because as I have mentioned before, if you I have pencil underneath watercolor. If you put watercolor on top of pencil, you cannot erase that pencil. So we want to get the most of it off. You know, if there's a little lurking in there, it's not a big deal. I just realized, where's my brush? We need a little edge on that. There we go. Just a funny little thing. Okay, now we're going to move to the doggy and erase the doggy. And it's very satisfying. There's a lot of this process that I find very satisfying. It just works, you know? Okay. These are now officially ready to paint. And they are so cute. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, we are going to paint. Let me get some of the excess. I like to keep a tidy place where I'm working. There might be a ton of clutter outside, but sometimes I find myself, oh, I'm not going to do a pen or something, so I keep it fairly tidy when I'm ready to paint. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to paint both of these, but I'm going to paint them one at a time. I don't want to do an assembly line because I want the paint to really move around. So I am going to put little doggy over here, and we're going to start with kitty. Okay, I'm using my regular paints. These are tube paints that I put into a blank or an empty palette that you can buy at art stores. They're surprisingly not that expensive. And then I just let the tubes dry, and I've been, you know, these will last forever. They're a combination of different brands, depending on where I was shopping and what I've needed. A lot of them are from Blick art stores. They're private label paint, but they have discontinued that. So I'm adding Windsor Newton and some core colors. And so it's a mishmash at this point. And then I have a second palette that has additional colors in because I ran out of space over there. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to move Kitty aside, because the first thing you want to do with your paints is activate them, get them wet and ready to go. They need to sort of get saturated. I'm sorry, I'm moving a bunch of things around here. Okay, I'm going to move that aside, and then I'm going to activate this paint as well. I don't really need that for a while, but you want to get them going, okay? And I have a paper towel. Make sure I don't have excess water on there. So I'm keeping that paper towel. So I'm going to bring the kitty back. So I have a paper towel. I have another piece of watercolor paper, the same as what I'm using to test my colors. Now, I can't tell you how important it is to have this extra little piece of watercolor paper, because I have done that where I think I really like a color and then I put it on my actual artwork and by golly, I don't. So you test it and then you can, it will serve you. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do this background, and I'm going to do it wet on dry. You could do it wet on wet if you like to, meaning wetting the paper and then coming in with color. But I'm going to do it wet on dry so I can demonstrate to you how you can keep the paint moving. So what I'm going to do before I start is I'm going to mix up a couple of different blues and a purple. So this is my Ultramarine Blue. And you want to get a good puddle going, because you want to make sure you have enough paint at the right consistency to do what you want to do. So I have a nice little puddle of ultramarine right there. I'll get her out of the way. And then I'm going to use, over here is my Phthalo Blue. Get a puddle of that going. Ooh, that's a lot. Give it more water. Have a good puddle there. Clean my brush. And then I'm going to make a purple. So my favorite purple is my, what I call my grape Kool-Aid purple, which is ultramarine and permanent rose. I think I need a little more ultramarine because I want a nice deep purple. Ooh, yes, please. Okay, that's really pretty. All right. So what I'm going to do is bring our girl back. And I'm going to, hopefully you can see my palette, but you'll see what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go into the ultramarine. Now you want a lot of paint. You want to get it into the belly of the brush because you need a lot of paint for this. So I'm just going to start blobbing this on in a fairly random fashion. And this is 100% cotton paper, so it stays a little wetter than some of the student grades, but you can still do this with the student grade. You just got to keep it moving. Keep moving is the whole thing. Okay, now I'm going to move to my purple. And I want to make sure that I keep that edge wet. So I'm adding the purple in there. It's really, I'm just going for kind of a night sky. I'm going to keep those edges wet. And I'm not laboring over this because I want to keep this moving. And when it dries, it's going to look really cool. All right. And now I'm going to go in with my third color. So 3 colors of blue and possibly a purple, or 2 colors of blue and a purple. See, this phthalo is a little warmer. And we're just moving this paint around. Filling in these gaps. Keeping it moving, and then it will all blend together. And when this dries, it is awesome. All right. So you saw how fast that happened. And I like these little gaps. That to me is what makes it really pretty. Okay, so we're going to set this aside and we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to hoover that up a little bit. We're going to do the exact same thing on the dog. Okay, so she's going over there to dry. And put a big blob of water there. And we're going to do the same thing with the dog. I am going to mix up more paint. Now, just FYI, it's out of camera range, but I have 2 jars of water. One, my intention is to keep clean for when I'm mixing color, and one is to swoosh out my brush when I'm changing colors. Do I always remember which is which? No, I do not. Get that purple again. Okay, we got a nice puddle of purple. Clean brush. Back into the ultramarine. Make sure we have enough of that. And I do have a bunch of that phthalo. Okay, so whatever color is on your brush when you start, just go for it. Keep her moving. This is the hardest part of this painting. It's just remind yourself to keep moving and don't go over places a second time. The thing with watercolor is if you want something darker later, like, you can go over it when it's dry. Also have a little. But it's hard to, when you have paint on your brush, adding more paint on top of something that's wet isn't really going to give you a darker color. It's just going to make it wetter. So if you go, oh, I wish that was darker, wait till it dries and then go back in. So again, I'm moving these edges around so that I know that they'll stay wet and then I won't have a mark. They'll dry in a really lovely way. Just keep that, what I'm calling the live edge, wet. Okay, now I'm going to go in with the phthalo and fill in these holes. And again, this has stayed wet. And we're going to have the prettiest backgrounds on these guys. You can use this technique for a lot of things. and you'll love it. Okay, let's just do that right there. Okay, stop. Sometimes I feel like when I talk to my students, what I'm saying mostly is stop what you're doing. Don't overwork it. Okay, so I'm going to let these dry because I want them to be really dry when I start adding other colors, because I don't want any of my other colors to bleed into this background. So we're going to just let those dry. We're going to be patient. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, I love the way these backgrounds came out now that they're dry. They're just really lovely, subtle, but really pretty. It looks like it's harder than it really is. And we're going to start painting. So I'm going to do these a little bit like an assembly line. But then once we get to the their details, it's going to change out a little bit. So bear with me as we do this. So I am going to start with their hats. So I'm going to use my, this is Cadmium Red Light, which is not a true cadmium because cadmium's poison. So it's a hue. And then I'm going to, I want to cool that down. It's kind of a fire engine-y red. And so I'm going to cool that down with a little Quinacridone Rose. And I want to have enough to go across both hats, but if I need to make more for the second one, I will do that. Okay, again, we're going to use our, that's really pretty. I think it needs a little more intensity, so we're going to add a little more of each. Yep, very pretty, very Christmassy. Okay, so I'm just going to go in with conviction. You just want to make sure you got enough paint on that brush. It's one thing I see with beginners often is they just, they don't get enough paint on there. And we want paint to move across our page. So again, we keep moving. Keep that edge wet. And there you go. The other thing we have these 3 little holly berries. Okay, so Kitty's done. Move to the dog. And do the same thing. I have enough to go on here. And we're all good. It's really cute. These are just so cheery. I just think they're fun. Okay, there. Now we just need the little berries, and that's good. So, as we know about watercolor, we have to let things dry, so things don't bleed into each other unless you want them to bleed into each other. But we don't. So we want to move to a different place on the artwork that's not going to touch where the red is. So we're not going to leave the bird alone. We're going to leave the holly alone for now. And we're going to go in and do the details on the critters. Okay, so I'm going to use my other palette, which since we've been chatting, I need to respray those. Okay, so these are going to be similar but different. So I'm going to do their, I'm going to do their fur. So with the dog, I'm going to do a little or a brown and white story, which reminds me of my old dog, Eddie. It was kind of a generic dog, but this is where you can paint your dog how you like. This is just going to be kind of a spotted little places. Eddie was he was an odd guy, quirky, shall we say. He had a fear of water towers. Yeah, I told you he was quirky. So I'm just kind of putting random brown spots on this guy. And we will say he looks like Eddie. And I do like pets with human names. I also have a dog named Larry, one of the greatest dogs ever. Okay, so there's this guy. Okay. And the kitty I'm going to do as a gray kitty. But again, make the kitty your kitty or a loved one's kitty. And I did a video that has, there's a cat on the, a cat laying on a chair. And do I have it down here? Okay, here she goes through stuff. Oh, well, what I did was, on that video, it's a cat sitting on a chair. I showed you 4 different ways of painting a cat. So if you want to refer back to that, you can see how if you want to paint your cat like this, different than I'm going to paint this one right now, then refer back to that video. I will link that in the description because it's so cute. Okay, if I do say so myself. Okay, so I'm going to make her like a gray with a little mask. So I'm just using black. And I want to have a pretty good contrast, but I don't want it to be black, black. I don't want it to read black and white kitty. It could, because, oh, don't you just love a tuxedo cat? Okay, so I'm just going to go in and I'm going to just make that little mask. And then on this as well. And then she's going to have a little bit like the side of her body and kind of her back. Now, you will notice that I keep referring to the cat as she and the dog as he. When I was a little kid, I thought cats were girls and dogs were boys. Am I the only one that thought that? Apparently, I didn't get out much. Okay, so we have her. Now we're going to do their, the dog is going to have a black nose. So we use that same black that we used for the kitty. And now here's a tip. One of the hardest things to paint is a black dog. So I would say go with a grayish color and then use a darker gray to make the shadows, because black dogs, otherwise you can't see their face or anything. They're kind of challenging to paint. I will say that. So just FYI. And then I'm going to come in with pink, and I've got this alizarin crimson, which is kind of a pretty little pink. It's a nice balanced pink. And I'm going to come in and do his little tongue. And then I'm going to do her nose in the pink. So cute. All right, we're on a roll here. Okay, so now I'm going to go in. I'm going to make her bow and his collar green. So I'm going to use this. This is Blick's version of Phthalo Yellow Green. It's really pretty. I use this a lot, and I have this cadmium yellow over here that is always contaminated with the green because I just, I always know that I'm using that. Okay, so I don't need a ton of this paint. I don't know why I'm mixing so much up, because I'm talking, that's why. Okay, so I'm gonna make her bow that light green. And I know my red is, the red hat is dry now. So I'm going to go in and hit half that holly. Top half of the holly will be this green. And then we'll come over and do the dog in the same manner. Okay, oh my gosh. It's funny with Christmas. There's kind of like one red and a couple of greens that seem to be acceptable to the people who love Christmas. Sometimes it feels a little limiting, but we'll make it work. Okay, so I'm going to let the green dry. Okay, I'm going to show you how to paint when something's white. So I have, this is Winsor & Newton's blue hue, and it's very contaminated. I'm going to clean that out a little bit. And I'm going to get some clean water. And I want a pretty pale blue. I like this because it's like, if there's such a thing as a neutral blue, it doesn't go to the purple, it doesn't go to the turquoise, it's just a really lovely blue. That's the Winsor & Newton-Cotman blue. That's a little strong. I want it to be just, because I'm gonna do a shadow. I need a lot more water in here. All right. Okay, better. We want a real pastel blue. So what we're gonna do is, right on the edge of this fur, and of course, make sure what you've done is already dry, like these brown spots. And then along the bottom of that puffball. And then we can go in and suck up the excess. And then that just gives a really pretty little shadow. Okay? And actually, now that we're at it, I'm going to put that in under his collar. And I'll probably come back later and put a little darker brown under the collar. Just gives a little something, something. And I'll do the same over here. Just hit one edge. These are all the little touches that just bring the life to these things. Yeah, you could do this without that little shadow, but it just adds a little something. Be very careful, that green might still be wet. Okay, and you know what? I'm going to drag that under her head. There we go. Okay, now that we have this blue out, I'm going to intensify it, and we're going to do the top bird. I'm not trying to make that bird look like a specific bird. I'm just making kind of a blue bird. A blue bird of happiness, but I want to make sure it's a different blue than what we had up top. So off we go. Might be a little intense, but we're fine, because we will enhance that as well. Okay, and we'll go over to our doggy. I'm not sure if you can hear that, but it's I'm recording this at noon on the first day of the month. And here in my town, they run the sirens. I don't know if you can hear that, but I can. Sometimes it goes on a long time. Okay, so we also have, I'm going to use yellow for his jingle bell and yellow for the beak, but we're going to wait a minute on that, a little bit. And in the meantime, we're going to go for a darker green for the second half of the holly and for a little extra on their accessories. So over here, I have some green. And I'm going to use the Winsor & Newton green, and this is a combo of sage green over here. It's a nice Christmassy green. So had I done what I should, which is test that lime green on my test paper, I would know that that was contrasty enough, but I already know that. Okay, so your second part of the holly. And then I'm going to stripe his collar. And just be deliberate. There. And when that dries, it's going to be really cute. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do is on her, I'm going to make those polka dots. So I'm just starting. I like to start with partial polka dots. It makes it just a little more realistic, if you will, even though it's a kitty with a Santa hat. This light green might be a little wet. It's bleeding just slightly. But I'm gonna not worry about that. And yeah, if I were to do this again, I would wait a minute for that green to dry. But I'm not doing it over for that. Well, we are, yeah, this is, okay, I jumped the gun on that. That's fine. Okay. One of those things that you see, but the recipient of this would not see. That one too got a little, I should have been more patient. Okay, if there's anything that teaches you, okay, if you need a lesson in patience, start doing watercolor. I'm telling you, that is a way. So I'm going to let this dry a little bit more, but I am going to do something cute in the meantime while we wait for that to dry enough to put the yellow on. I have a pink, it's a Prismacolor colored pencil. It doesn't have to be Prismacolor, just a pale pink or red colored pencil, just to add one more little element here. I'm going to go into his little cheeks and just make them rosy. And I'm just doing sort of a round, really lightly. And that just adds a little extra artistic flair on there. So he's getting pink cheeks. And she's just going to get pink cheeks near her whiskers. Love her, dude. Just enough to just zhuzh it up. Okay, now, I had said that I'm going to put a little extra brown under him just to give it to look like a little shadow. So I'm going to mix up a tiny bit of that burnt sienna. And if I'm using the same color on top of when it's dry, you'll see. So this was my dog color. I'm using basically the same color. You can get a darker, that's how you can add a nice shadow. Okay, so I'm going to go in and just right under the hat. He's going to get a little shadow. That's all. And then right under his collar, he's going to get that little shadow. And it just adds a little extra dimension. And with her, it is so funny that I've gendered these critters. But anyway, we're going to go back with that same black, and I'm just going to put a little bit under her hat right there. And right under the bow. Just, again, one of those little tiny touches. It kind of sells it. All right. And you know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to do that under her, under the bird. Let's go in with a little more red. These are the things you kind of do at the end where you're like, oh, that would be cute. That'd be cute. I'm just going to put a tiny little shadow under the bird so it looks like it's sitting on top of the hat. We're not going for like realistic shadows and rendering this whole thing. We're just giving a little something, something. Cute, 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 cute. Okay. I still am not completely convinced that it's time to do the yellow yet. So we're going to go in. I have, all right, where is it? Oh, here we go. Okay. My current favorite white marker is this Uniball Signo. And we have all been down the road with the white, trying to do white on top of watercolor. And so far, this is working. This is working. That's not to say it will continue to work, but right now it's working. So I'm going to go into the background and do some like snow. And this one has some pretty good coverage, but again, test it. So let's, so what I'm going to do is, I want it to look like real-ish snow. So I'm going to go in and just start randomly adding little dots, sometimes in clusters, sometimes fatter, sometimes little tiny dots, so that it looks like it's snowing. You can leave this out if you don't have a white marker. Still going to be cute. And if you have maybe white ink or white gouache, you could do this with a brush, but that sounds really fussy to me. So you kind of work with watercolor, you're kind of working in stages, but this is turning out really cute. There's something about adding this snow that just adds a whole new, I mean, that is just turning out so cute. And all on this one, oh, I'm going to do two things on this. One will be the beak, the bill. I guess it's a bill. What's the difference between a beak and a bill? I guess you guys will tell me. Or I could Google it, but, you know, why would I do that when you guys are always very helpful in telling me things I don't necessarily know? And you know what? I really appreciate that. A few more little ones. Let's do some clusters. Don't want to get too patterny. We're trying to, the idea is if you make them too regular, they end up looking like either like polka dots. But what I like about having lived in the Midwest for a good part of my life, some snowflakes, even though they might all look really big and fat, some are close and some are far away. And so that's why we do the different sizes, to make it look charming and playful. The science of drawing snowflakes. Okay, so now we're going to come back. Oh, I still have to do his jingle bell. Okay, so I've got over here, I have a cadmium yellow medium, any kind of warm yellow. I'm going to use cool yellow too. I'm not the boss of you. And I'm just going to do the little beak on here. Hoover up the excess. And then do his. And then do his little jingle bell. Well, didn't that just tell the whole story? Oh my gosh. So cute. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my other palette where I have this Winsor Newton blue hue, and I'm going to put a tiny shadow on the bird. So this was the bird color. Just want to make sure I have enough difference. And I'm just going to come in and kind of hit the bottom of the bird. Just come around. And then the bottom of the wing. And let's get our kitty. Do the same. I thought that was a little heavy. But, and part of it is we want to make this bird stand out against the background. So we're giving her a little extra. Oops. All right. I am calling these finished. Let's look at them. Oh my gosh. Okay. You guys, these are really cute. In case you were wondering, are they cute? Yes, they are. Okay, I am calling these finished. I will probably round the corners when I make them into cards. And I hope you enjoyed this project. I want you to know that I am so proud of you for jumping in and doing these projects with me. You know, creativity takes courage, and I'm glad you're here. You're worth it. You're worth the time it takes to figure some of this stuff out. And thank you again from the bottom of my heart. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.